Hey fashion lovers, welcome back to Eleganza TV. If you're new here, my name is Eunice and today I'll be showing you how to draft this trendy corset top with a double V-shaped keyhole neckline. And in the next video, which will be coming next after this video drops, will be the sewing tutorial and I'll be fitting it on my body so you can see how it fits. For now, let's dive right into the drafting process so you can create this unique design for yourself. And if you're yet to subscribe, please kindly subscribe to the channel, okay? So if you're looking to make this for yourself, these are the materials that you'll be needing and they're listed on the screen. I made use of 4 yards of crepe for both the trouser and the top and 1 yard of skin net. In the course of the video, I'll tell you what the skin net is about. And then 3 yards of chantilly net because of the sleeve, okay? So let's move on to cutting the pattern. So to begin drafting the pattern, I went ahead to rule a straight line which is serving as my starting line and my shoulder. So from that point, I will go ahead to take my body measurement. First of all, I went ahead to mark my shoulder to nipple, my shoulder to under bust, my half length, and then my top length. So for the top length, I wanted it to be 25 inches, but I have 24 inches here. So I'll just go ahead to make use of 24 inches. Then after cutting my pattern, I'll add the remaining 1 inch, okay? So I'll just go ahead to do that and rule a straight line. So guys, after rolling the line, I went ahead to label them bust point, under bust, half length, and top length, okay? Then what I'll be doing next is to take half of my shoulder on that starting line, which is 8 inches, and then I'll come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slant. Then I'll also go ahead to mark that same 8 inch on that shoulder slant there. Then right here, I'll be taking the neck width of 3.5 inches. Then I'll go ahead to use my straight ruler to connect from where the neck width stops to my shoulder slants. So next, from my shoulder slant, I will go ahead to mark my arm side length. To get the accurate measurement for that, you need to take your bust measurements divided by 6 plus 1.5 inch. So after doing the calculation for mine, I got 8 inches. After marking the 8 inches point, I went ahead to rule a straight line on that point. So still on that line, I'll also be taking half of my shoulder on that point because I want to get a straight line to my shoulder slant. So I'll be using my straight ruler to connect the points together just as you see me doing. And then the next thing I'll be doing is to divide what I have there into 2. So I have 4 inches and then I'll come in by half an inch. Then on my arm side length, which is also my chest line, I'll be taking quarter of my bust measurement. Okay. Now the 3 points that you see me pointing on the pattern paper, I'll be connecting them together using my French curve ruler. So guys, the next thing I'm going to do is divide my nipple to nipple measurement into 2, which is my bust span. So I have 3.75 as my nipple to nipple after dividing it into 2. So I'll go ahead to mark that point from my chest line down to my top line, just as you see me doing. So then after taking the point, I'll use my straight ruler to connect them together. Okay, so next we'll be taking our darts. On your underbust, you're going to mark 1 inch on both sides of the line. And you also be doing the same thing on your half length. You mark 1 inch on both sides of the line and then also on the top length. So after taking the darts, I went ahead to rule a straight line on the points. And then the next thing I'll be doing is to use my curved ruler to connect from each of the dart leg to the bust point, okay? So these are you're going to do it on both sides. So now we've gotten the darts for the under bust. Now we need to get the darts for the up. So you're going to measure from your starting line to get your cleavage line, okay? So I want to make mine to be 7 inches. So I'll go ahead to rule a straight line on that 7 inches point that I marked. And then I will extend the bust span, which is the nipple to nipple I have on my bust point. I'll be extending it to the cleavage line. So after extending the line to the top, I'll be taking my darts there. On the center front, which is the smaller part, I'll be marking 0.75. Then the part going to the side, I'll be taking 1 inch. So this dart is not like a compulsory dart to use for all bust sizes. This dart could be used for like bust 38 to 42. So if you're on the bigger side, like 45 upwards, then you're going to use 1 inch on the smaller part, and then 1.5 inch on the side part. Then if you're on the smaller bust, like 36, 35, 32, you're going to use half inch on the center front and 0.75 on the other side. So the bigger your bust, the more you increase the dart. The smaller your bust, the more you reduce the dart. Okay. It's not advisable for your breast cup to be too cuppy if you don't have like a fuller bust. Okay. So you're going to connect it just like the way I've done. And then the next thing I'll be doing now is to get the corset bridge. So I'm just going to go down from the cleavage line by 1 inch. And then on that point, I will go ahead to go in by half an inch. So basically from my shoulder to my bridge, which is the middle part of the corset, is 8 inches. And then on that point, I marked half an inch, like I went in by half an inch. I also went ahead to do the same thing on my bust point. So I'll be using my ruler to connect the both points together, just as you see me doing now. So the next thing I'll be doing is to use my curved ruler to connect from the dart to the bust bridge, okay? Then after doing that, I'll also be connecting from the dart on the top to meet with the bust bridge, okay, to form a sweetheart neckline. And then I'll also be connecting the side parts to the armhole. So what I'm going to do next is to draw out the neckline. So the neckline is a V neckline, okay? So you can choose to stop the neckline before the bust bridge or after the bust bridge. So it is just your choice. But I'm going to do mine before the bust bridge. So I'll just go ahead to use my ruler to connect from the neck width to the bust bridge. I'll be using my straight ruler first to get the points. So guys, after drawing the straight line, I went ahead to use my pattern master, the curvy part of my pattern master, to make my V to be curved, okay? So this way it's going to be relaxed well on your neck. And then for the triangle shaped keyhole neckline, I'll go ahead to mark from my starting line 4 inches. So I'll just go ahead to mark a point there. And then on the center front of my corset, I'll be going in by 1 inch after the dart, okay? And then on the side part of the dart, I will go in by 1.5 inch, okay? So I'll just go ahead to explain again. From the shoulder, I measured down 4 inches. And then on the center front, I went ahead to go in by 1 inch after the dart, okay? And then the side part, I went in by 1.5 inch. So the 3 points I'll be connecting together to form my triangle shape. So I just decided to make it 3.5 inch instead of 4 inches. So I'll go ahead to reconnect the triangle shape again. So guys, after doing all of that, the next thing I'll be doing now is to take my body measurements. I've gone ahead to mark quarter of my bust measurements on the chest line. And then on the half length, I'll go ahead to take quarter of my waist measurements. Then for the snatch waistline, I'll be going in by 0.75. So because my pattern is going to be on fold, as I'm taking away 0.75, it means I'm taking away 1.5 inch from the front pattern. Then I'll go ahead to replace the dart I have on the half length to the side parts. And then I'll go over to my bust and measure the dart I have on that bust. Okay, and then replace it to the side part as well. Then I'll go ahead to connect the 2 points together. And then on the hemline, which is the top length, I'll go ahead to take quarter of my round hip measurement. So my round hip measurement divided by 4 gives me 11 inches. And I will not be replacing the dart because if I replace it, it's going to be too wide on the bottom. So I'll just go ahead to connect that point to my half length. So on the side part of the corset, I'll be coming down by 4 inches from my half length. and then I'll use my curved ruler to connect from that point to the hemline. So guys, the next thing I will do is to measure my bust span, which is my nipple to nipple divided by 2, and then I will bring it over to the side part and add 1 inch. Then I'll be using my curved ruler to connect from my underbust to the armhole. Okay, so this 1 inch is not a standard. If you're sewing this dress for a bigger bust size, then you're going to add 1.5 inch after your bust span. Okay, so at this point, I'll go ahead to add my sewing allowance of 1 inch, and then I'll extend the line on the top length. Then I'll be using my ruler to connect all the points together for the sewing allowance. So guys, before we go ahead to cut the pattern, note that the front half length is 24 inches, and then on the side part, I came up by 3 inches. So making my back top length to now be 21 inches. So I just want you to take note of that before we go ahead to cut. So just go ahead to label your patterns. The top part, label it the yoke, label the cup part, and also the bodice, okay? And put all your arrows for recognition. So the next thing I'll be doing now is to cut out the lines, okay? So just watch closely and see the way I'll be cutting it. Let me take you back to a time when love was as precious. So guys, after cutting all the pieces, this is how it looks. The next thing I'll be doing now is to keep the other sides, and then I will be taping down the 2 darts together. So then I'll be taping the center front pattern to the side front because I want it to be one piece. I want it to be a dartless corset so that I won't have much stress sewing it. So this is how it's going to be. So the next thing I'll be doing now is to just rule the lines that I will be sewing my boning channel on. Okay, so this is just a way of illustration. So guys, after doing all of that, now we move on to cutting the back pattern. So guys, at this point we'll be cutting out the back. So I have a fresh pattern paper here, and I went ahead to create a starting line, and then from that point I'll be taking my body measurement. So I'll go ahead to mark my half length of 17 inches, and then I said I was going to make the top length to be 21 inches. Okay, so I'll just go ahead to connect the points all through to the pattern to get a straight line. And then still on the starting line, I will be taking half of my shoulder, and I'll come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slant. Okay, and then for the neck width, I will still be making use of 3.5 inches just like the front, and the neck depth will be 1.5 inch. So I'll go ahead to connect the shoulder slant and the neck depth. So then from the shoulder slant, I'll go ahead to measure the length of 8 inches for my arm side. In the front pattern, I already told you how to get the calculations for an accurate armhole. So after doing that, I went ahead to label the patterns, the chest line, half length, and top length. So then on the chest line, I'll also be marking half of my shoulder, and I'll connect from that point to the shoulder slants. Then I'll measure what I have on that arm side length, divide it into 2, which is 4 inches. Then that 4 inches point, I will go in by half an inch. Then I'll go over to my chest line and take quarter of my bust measurements. So I'll just use my arm curve ruler to connect the 3 points that I've marked together. So I've already gone ahead to mark the bust measurement. Then on the half length, I'll be taking quarter of my waist measurement, okay? And then I'll also be going in by 0.75, just like I did for the front. And then I'll connect that point to my bust points. So guys, on the top length, I'll be taking quarter of my hip measurement, and then I'll go in by 1 inch. Then I'll be connecting that point to my half length. So I decided to just go in by 1.5 inch instead of 1 inch. So after marking your hip measurement divided by 4, you go in by 1.5 inch, okay? So that it will not be too wide. So I went ahead to connect it again to my half length, and this is for the back. So I'll also be adding 1 inch seam allowance on the side parts, and then I'll be connecting the points together. So guys, next we'll be doing is styling our back. So I want to first start with the yoke part. So on the chest line, you're going to go in by 1.5 inch, and then on the neck, you're also going to come down by 1.5 inch. So we'll be using the curved ruler to connect the both points together. So guys, just go ahead to connect however you like. You can make the circle to be small or make it very bold. So just go ahead to do that. And then the next thing will be to take the eyelet opening, the opening for the back. So since I've marked 1.5 inch on the chest line, I will divide what I have and mark on the top length. So I'll be taking 0.75 on the top length. If you have 2 inches on the top, you're going to take 1 inch on the top length. So that's just how it is. So I went ahead to connect the points together, and this is how the back pattern is going to be. So I will be cutting out the pattern now, so just watch and see the way I cut it. So also I'll be doing a back neckline because my yoke is going to be separate from the back pattern. So I just went ahead to connect a line on my chest line. I just use the curvy part of my ruler. So this is it. I will just go ahead to label all the patterns and cut. So guys, this is how the back pattern should look after you're done. So now we'll be cutting on our fabric, but before doing that, I want to first of all complete the measurement on the front part. I said before when cutting the pattern that I wanted my top length to be 25 inches, but I had 24 inches as the length of the pattern. So I'm just going ahead to add 1 inch to reconnect it again to the curve. So this is totally optional. I gave my reasons because I want the top length to be longer as 24 inches, okay? But if you have your exact top length, then there's no need to do this. So guys, next thing we'll be doing now is to draft out the sleeve. So from the starting line, I will go ahead to measure the length of the sleeve I want, and I'm going to make it 22 inches because there'll also be a two-step flare on the bottom of the sleeve, so I don't want it to be too long. So 22 inches is just perfect for me. And then the next thing I also went ahead to do is to mark 12 inches as my elbow length. Then I'll go ahead to rule a straight line. And then from the starting line, I'll be taking my cap height. So to get this measurement, you'll be dividing your bust measurement by 12. So I have 39.5 inch as my bust measurement. I divided it by 12, which give me 3.3 inch. So I'll just go ahead to mark 3.3 inch, which is going to be my cap height, and then I'll rule a straight line on that point. So I later went ahead to approximate it to 3.5 inches. So guys, this is it. On the starting line also, I came in by 2 inches, just as you can see. And then on the cap height, I'll go ahead to measure the roundness of my armhole and divide it by 2 and mark a point there. So I have 8.5 inches. So on that point, I will just be drawing a sketch like an S shape to meet with the 2 inches on top of the starting line. Okay, so this is how it's going to be, and I'll be using my marker just to make it visible. So next, on my elbow length, I'll go ahead to measure the roundness of my elbow and divide it by 2. Then I'll also be adding 0.5 inch for sewing allowance. And then I'll be connecting the points together. Then I'll move over to the sleeve length. I will take the roundness of my bottom and divide it by 2 and also add 0.5 inch for sewing allowance. So guys, this is how you cut your normal basic sleeve. So the next thing I'll be doing now is to cut all of this on my fabric. So I folded my chantilly net into two, okay, and I'll go ahead now to place my pattern on it. But before doing that, we need to take note of this. If you have a chantilly knit that is stretchy like mine, you're going to make use of the stretchy part as the length. So instead of the stretchy part to be horizontal, it's going to be vertical. So I'll be placing the front pattern close to the folded part of the fabric because I don't want it to have a dart and joining. So I'll just go ahead to pin the pattern to the fabric. So when I want to cut, I'll be cutting with 1/2 inch allowance on all the top parts except for the side, okay, because I've already added 1 inch sewing allowance on the side part, and I'll also not be adding sewing allowance to the bottom. So guys, I went ahead to cut the patterns on my fabric. For this yoke part, as you can see, I cut with 1/2 inch seam allowance on the shoulder, the armhole, and the V-shape keyhole neckline. Okay, and then I used the crepe fabric for the yoke part. I cut it into two for my main fabric and also for my lining. Then I iron interfacing to my main fabric. Then for the core part, I also cut with 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I also use the crepe fabric for the core part, but I use the chantilly lace to place on top of it, okay? And then also I cut my lining the same way. Then I've also gone ahead to add interfacing to the core part. Then for the body, as you can see, just like I said, I was going to add 0.5 inch on the front part and also on the cup. Then I also cut my skin knit the same way. So this is the reason why I needed the skin knit. I want it to be serving as a lining. So for the back pattern, I also used the crepe fabric for the yoke, and then I cut it into two for the main fabric and also for the lining. Then I also went ahead to iron interfacing to the main fabric of the yoke. Also, I added 1/2 inch sewing allowance on all the sides of the yoke except for that neck part that I use 1 inch. So you can even go ahead to add 2 inches sewing allowance on that part, okay? I want to put a press button, so that's why I increase it by 1 inch. Then for the body of the back pattern, I added 0.5 inch on the top. Then I cut on my chantilly net and also on my skin net. So guys, for the sleeve pattern, I cut it on fold and I cut it into two for both sleeves with 0.5 inch sewing allowance on the top. Then I did not add any sewing allowance to the side part as I've already added on the pattern paper. So we've come to the end of the drafting tutorial of this double V-shaped keyhole neckline corset top. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed making this unique design with me. Please don't forget to subscribe for more creative sewing tutorials on this channel, and also stay tuned for the sewing process that will be coming shortly. See you in our next video.